It's interesting how Paula serves as a foil for Anna throughout the novel. And there are things that, those kinds of critiques that are hard to hear, it comes through Paula's voice. Now it's interesting because Anna sort of believes in the promise of America, the promise of democracy, and then yet Paula keeps pushing and pointing out its limits. But I'm curious to know, why is it, especially after you read that passage, the college setting could have been an interesting place to set the novel, and yet you choose to do it in a publishing house. So I'm wondering, why did you choose that particular venue, and then why from that venue did you move into the particular scene that you just read for us?
Well, one, I'm an academic, so put it in a college setting, the camera's on me. And two, I think that the publishing industry as it is right now allows me a microcosm for examining just that. What has happened in the last couple of years is that mainstream publishers have created their own little ghettos within mainstream publishing. And writers run around saying, oh, I've been published by Random House. Well, no. You've been published in an imprint in Random House, where the dollars are not the same. The dollars, the marketing dollars are not the same wherever you, nor is the editing, by the way. Nor is the editing. If you read those books, you see how poorly they are edited. Because nobody expects literature to come out of those imprints. They're a money-making machine. And they are, and so it's almost, sort of almost saying, you know, what are the expectations? In this case, what are the expectations for writers of color? What kind of work do you, well, I can tell you the answer, unfortunately, is that books by writers of color, let me be specific, books by black writers are now a genre. It's just simply, so much so that in this novel, there's a writer who says, publish my book, but don't put my picture on it. Because when you put my picture on my book, then people make certain assumptions of what that novel is going to be about. And now this is shooting you in the foot in a way, because you know what turned the tide for all of this. What turned the tide was Terry McMillan's book, Waiting to Exhale. And what happened before that is that the assumption was that there was no market for fiction by black writers. The black people don't read or buy books. Let's be more specific. They don't buy books. And white readers say these stories have nothing to do with my experience, so why am I buying these books? Of course, people of color know that only very recently were they reading any other books except books written by white writers, and the words that they were looking at were those words. I mean, those are the words I woke up in. So it's so that I wanted to talk about that, about that kind of, and that defining of a book by a black writer in that way. I mean, it just seems that there are just only those many slots for writers of color, of books that are literary fiction. You know, like the America can only handle 10 or that's I think five writers of color, flying black writers who write literary fiction. They can only handle that. And so what I was saying about Terry McMillan's Waiting to Exhale, when that book got published, and I'm sure you know a story about buying a lot of the books and sending them all over the place, and she bought them on her own to prove that she was able to sell those many books. And of course the publishers looked up and they said, wow, this was before Waiting to Exhale, I think it was Disappearing Acts. And they said, wow, you know, there is that And what really happened, if you remember when Waiting to Exhale came out, the marketing that was done for that book before that book hit the bookstore guaranteed that that book was sold. I mean, there were big pictures of Terry big posters. Every place I went, it was in every, in Long Island, just everywhere I went, I said, Terry, I knew Terry pretty well. I said, your book's not published.
Speaking about?
Terry McMillan.
Oh, Terry McMillan.
Yeah. What I'm saying is that the marketing that was done for that book before that book came out was incredible. It was huge, huge publicity. And then the book, everything followed and the book did well. Well, the conclusion for the publishing industry is, wow, this is what black readers like. They like this kind of romance and these girlfriend stories. So there became a clone of it. Every other book with the four girls sitting together, 4 perspectives, 3 perspectives, 2 perspectives, followed by chick lit, urban lit, ghetto lit, and you couldn't get in a literary fiction by a black writer. Unless you will name them. Toni Morrison, who isn't doing it too much more. You can't call Maya, please. But we did Toni Morrison already. We did Alice Walker. Come on, come up with another one. Oh, you can't call Chinua Achebe. I am pretty old and I have been reading Chinua Achebe for years. You can't, and he's African, come on, in America.
Tony K.
Paul Marshall.
No, Tony K. Bambara.
Paul Marshall.
Paul Marshall is about almost 80 years old. And her last book, Brown Girl, Brown Stone, was published in 1959. Okay, so we can't
No,
go.
but there are lots of other people. There's Ed Weed.
I'm asking that.
Oh, okay.
I want to fill one hand.
And you want women?
I don't care. I just want to fill. I want to fill one hand.
Colson Whitehead. How about that?
Okay. Who's
Yeah.
mine?
Edwidge Chandler.
I'll reach down.
Edward Jones.
Edward Jones.
Kyle Phillips.
Carl Phillips.
Gaz Phillips. But, okay, but I'm not, I don't think, I can't too much with Gaz Phillips. But yeah, but you see my point. And the problem about that is that among white writers, you can go in a bookstore and see a variety. And the danger about what's happening there is that it leads to some assumptions that this is not just a slice of black life, but all of black life. And whereas book fiction by white writers, you can say, well, this is a slice, yeah, they do act like sluts here, but they are also, upstanding people. But when you have a glut of only this, I'm very fortunate to be published by Akashic, and there's my senior editor behind there, Ibrahim Hamid. But that's a very courageous publishing house there. And thank God they got rewarded recently with the bestseller. But they're just unusual. It's an unusual situation where they would take that risk. I mean, I understand the dollars of it. I do understand that. I mean, to be a publisher may love books, but after all, he is in business and has to make some kind of profit. And so does that answer your question?
Yes. Well, I have a follow-up question, because as you were asking for the list, I think part of what you're actually doing as well is making a distinction between lowbrow, highbrow, and middlebrow fiction, right? And so I wondered, there's a moment in the novel where where you make a critique about that, if what we were saying before, that there's an expectation of what black writers write, then here you're talking about what black readers, who are black readers, and you make this critique that readers are cultivated, that you can't move from ghetto lit or urban lit or even chick lit to reading what you might consider substantial literature, right? Invisible Man. So I wonder, A, what you're making with that dig, but if you're not actually then setting up a hierarchy, and if what we saw with Terry McMillan is that she found a kind of middle ground. And when you were, because I was curious that Carol Phillips, for example, didn't make the list.
Because
Is that,
he's not selling quite as the same.
oh, okay, so I wondered if that was highbrow, that you were saying, no, he doesn't quite fit, but
I'm
okay.
going to try to read just a little of that, which we had not planned, but I think, okay. So the first point I'm making is that I mean, all art is entertainment. You're not going to a movie to learn something, and you're not looking at a piece of art to learn something, you're not reading a book to learn something, right? So you're in the entertainment business. But if you are, what's happening is that you have a whole array of different kinds of books. If you go in a bookstore by white writers, this is not so for by black writers. And if you go on the shelf that says, you know, fiction by African American writers, you're going to see what you see. I mean, you look at the covers, you see what it is, and it leads to an assumption, it reinforces an assumption about black life. So it's not that I don't think that they shouldn't be there, but I worry about such writers as that we had in the past. Where's your James Baldwin? Where's your Charles Chestnut? Where's your Zora Neale Hurston? Where's your Richard Wright? I mean, even when we were naming these people, the 5 on my list, if you think about these people who were inspirational in a way, who wrote good books, but were also inspirational, where is it? But here's the conversation Anna is having. Anna is not against publishing chick lit and urban lit and so on. She's trying to get the company also to publish literary fiction, and she's pushed out by this guy who comes in and said, you know, you really don't understand niche marketing, and you don't understand this. And this is, and the other point is that, I guess because I'm a teacher, what I want to do with my students is to allow them to live the good life. And you have to open the possibilities for someone to enjoy all of the good life. I mean, how do you get to know good music, good classical music? How does that happen? You have to be introduced to it. You have to be taught it. I mean, I think opera is the easiest thing to like, but you need to be taught it. You need to be, I mean, you know, it's the craziest thing. People dressed up in all these kinds of costumes, singing their heart out about all kinds of things, and you know the way it's going to end. And it's very foolish. But this combination of all these pieces, if you are taught, if you are exposed to it and you're taught it, you have another avenue of enjoying the good life. I just think how limiting is the life that he allows some people. You understand what I'm trying to say? So anyhow, here's the thing about this book. So he says, the guy is saying to her, young people like these books, he says. You know, Anna is trying to say, let's have some literary fiction, and he's saying, I don't know what your problem is, young people like these books. And he says, at least these books get them reading. She has heard the argument many times before, though it still shocks her that intelligent people in positions of leadership with the responsibility of guiding the young, still promote such drivel. At least these books get them reading. It is an expression of despair, of the failure of schools to educate the young. Test results of black children in the inner city are dismal, and blame is cast on the powerful, seductive force of the visual media. Educators throw up their hands and surrender. The battle against the lure of cable TV and video games is one they cannot win. At least these books get them reading. But reading what? Young people, like young people throughout the ages, get pleasure from the stimulation of their imagination. And Anna is convinced that no other medium stimulates the imagination more than reading. For the reader must transform black and white symbols into colorful pictures in his mind. He must bond with people he has not met in the flesh or seen on the street. He becomes judge and jury in battles between good and evil. If all we can say is at least they are reading, we have failed to pass on to the next generation the pleasures that come from good books that challenge us to imagine lives we have not lived, to empathize with those we do not know. Books, Anna believes, are our defense against those who would lead us like lambs to the slaughterhouse. Books teach us to think, to use our intelligence, to sort out right from wrong, good from bad, the beautiful from the ugly, to make decisions on what we know is right and just, not just on what we have been told to do or think by powerful people concerned with their welfare instead of ours. Books can prevent wars, keep us from destroying ourselves and our planet. Why else do dictators and warmongers burn books in the public square? Why else was a fatwa declared against a novelist calling for his execution? And is it good enough that these are the only types of books they read, Anna asks. It's a good beginning, Tim Green answers. These books open up the world of reading to them. They get to find out there's fun in reading. And who knows, he smiles brightly at her, they may get to like the books you read, Anna. She does not think that reading poorly written, exclusively plot-driven books will lead a young person to seek out more challenging ones. She believes children have to be taught. She believes teachers must do the hard work of giving children the tools to decode words on the printed page, to appreciate the beauty of a well-turned phrase, to ponder the validity of ideas they have not considered before. She believes that a society is in danger when good books are neither written nor read. Was it reading the kind of books he wants to publish that turned him on to Allison? Anna seriously doubts that. He went to good schools. He studied at Cornell. His teachers did not experiment with him. They did not ease him into appreciating Allison by having him read novels like the likes of Rain and Benton, who's a chicken book. He and too many like him seem to lack faith in the possibility of remedying an inferior education, of resetting the clock for young men and women whose deficiency in reading and writing have accumulated after years of neglect. Yet these are the vulnerable young minds most in need of inspiration and hope. These are the underprivileged youth whose notion of the good life will remain limited unless expanded by good books that could open the way for them to the beauties of the world. I don't think that someone who reads Ghetto Wife will graduate to reading Invisible Man, Anna says. Tim Green is still holding Ralph Ellison's novel in his hand. He slowly and carefully places it on the coffee table and smoking, they have that argument.